If I had a nutrition client that wanted to lose 10 pounds in a month, here's the exact plan I would give them step by step, starting with number one, how much food. If there's gonna be one thing that is going to make or break your nutrition client's success, especially right off the bat, it's gonna be how much food you give them. You need to get this right, and let me show you how. Here's where most nutrition coaches and personal trainers struggle. They prescribe an amount of food that should work. And a lot of times it isn't correct for them, and they actually end up gaining weight, so you clearly don't start things off on the right foot. And they do this with the intent of doing things correctly or more sustainably, but we need to get our clients moving in the right direction right off the bat. Research shows that when people get some quick wins or make some progress right off the bat, they're more likely to stick with things. So what I want to teach you today is a way to set food and calorie levels that are more likely to produce results, instead of just being right. Obviously, for someone to lose weight, it doesn't really matter what type of food they eat, what kind of diet they follow, or what kind of exercise that they do. They need to be in a calorie deficit, and a calorie deficit is a calorie imbalance, meaning that the calories that they're taking in through food and drink are going to be less than the calories that they're burning. And to set this up, you need to roughly know how many calories someone's burning in a day. Then you can make sure that the amount of food that they're eating is lower than this level, so they start tapping into their body's energy stores, namely fat, and then they'll lose weight. And you can do this through a calculation, which is what everyone does more often than not, but in a lot of cases, it doesn't help them lose weight. But more on that in a second. Here's what you're gonna do instead. To get a better understanding of what your client currently eats, get them tracking their nutrition for 3 to 5 days on a smartphone app, using something like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer or MacroFactor. And they shouldn't just pay attention to what they eat. We wanna know the serving sizes and the weight so we can get a sense of the objective numbers, which is gonna give you tons of insight around what they're normally doing and what's holding them back from reaching their goals or losing weight. These initial numbers and the averages of them over the 3 days are gonna give you a better sense of how many calories they need to be consuming on an individual basis for them, based on what they're actually eating and not what they should be eating, the theoretical stuff, which helps eliminate any discrepancies between the two. Because what they should be able to eat and what they are actually eating are two completely different things. So you take a look at what happens to the averages of their calories and macronutrients over these 3 days, along with their body weight. And if their body weight trends down over the 3 days, they're more than likely already in a calorie deficit, even if some of this is water weight. Using this as a way to find their starting place around how much total food they should be eating is going to get them to a true deficit quicker than trusting what a textbook calculation says they should be doing, which will more than likely overestimate how much food they need to be eating. And that's where 99% of science-based coaches go wrong. They take on a weight loss client and try to get this starting place right. They err on the side of being conservative and run one of these calculations like the Harris-Benedict equation or the Mifflin-St. Jeor that spits out a number of their estimated calories that they burn throughout the day. They put them on a deficit based on this number, and the client starts here, and more often than not, they actually gain weight. And even if the client expresses that this feels like too much food, the coach says, be patient, this should work. Client ends up gaining weight, gets frustrated, and quits the entire process. So no one wins that way. So use what they're currently doing as a starting place to set their food and calorie levels, and you'll get them making progress faster. So the prescription here in the first step is to get them tracking their food intake for 3 days. If their body weight trend is down and the calories seem appropriate, set their calories close to there. And if their body weight stays the same, make a small 5 to 10% calorie drop and assess after the first week. Okay, but what do you do about exercise? Many nutrition coaches are also personal trainers or fitness professionals, so they can handle the exercise side of things. But even if they aren't, you can still give them recommendations on exercise. Now, resistance training for the most part isn't gonna be the reason why someone loses weight, but for the most part, they should still be lifting weights 3 to 4 times per week to retain the muscle they already do have. This is completely necessary, and if you're not in a position to prescribe this directly, you could always point them in the direction of a coach or point them towards some free resources that they can follow, and then hold them accountable to it. So that part's easy. What about the other forms of exercise that could add to this energy imbalance and help them lose weight? If they enjoy doing cardio-based training, you can work that in 1 to 2 times per week, but their nutritional intake is gonna do most of the heavy lifting. Here's what I would get them to do though, especially if they wanna lose 10 pounds over the first month. They need to ramp up the amount of low intensity exercise they're doing. This may not seem like much, but this is what's gonna help them burn fat and not make them more hungry, which some of the more intense forms of exercise like spin classes or high intensity interval training may do. So during this first 3-day tracking phase, get them to track their steps as well. Most of us are already walking around with a pedometer, and you can just pull the step count from the Apple Health app or the the Google Fit app and get some baseline levels of steps. And then from there, take the average and add anywhere between 2,000 to 3,000 more steps per day. From an exercise standpoint, this is how most of your nutrition clients should be moving in order to lose fat. So for this part of the plan, they should be doing strength or resistance training with weights 3 to 4 times per week, walking 2,000 to 3,000 steps more than their baseline levels, ramping those up, and include cardio or high intensity interval training if they enjoy it. Next up, where should these calories come from? Number 3, macronutrients. So if someone's gonna lose a significant amount of weight, 10 pounds over a month, we wanna make sure that it's good weight and they don't just become a smaller version of themselves. What happens if they don't eat enough protein during a calorie deficit? They're gonna start tapping into their lean muscle mass to make up the deficit. And without sufficient protein, they're more likely to become smaller and not leaner, losing more muscle than needed, which might impact their overall health and metabolism. To prevent this, they need to be eating enough protein. For most beginners, starting protein levels at around 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight is a good place to start. However, for best results, which we're always shooting for, somewhere closer to 2.0 grams per kilogram is best. Achieving this higher level of protein right off the bat could be challenging, so it's okay, especially from the beginning, if you notice that your client isn't consuming a lot of protein, to slowly ramp it up. Gradually increase their protein over 1 to 2 weeks, building the habits they need to consume more protein. But keep in mind, the goal here is to achieve results quickly, so we may need to be more aggressive, especially if they're highly motivated. While protein is the most crucial, the other macronutrients, carbohydrates, and fat, they also supply calories. They aren't going to be as important in a calorie deficit as protein is. So when starting a diet, it's perfectly fine to set carbohydrate and fat levels based on personal preference within this deficit, without specifically needing to fixate on a set level of carbohydrates or fat, or set a target. But keep in mind, for best results, you're better tracking all three. So for this step, for protein levels, we're going to shoot for 1.5 to 2.0 grams per kilogram of protein per day. Females eating at least 100 grams, males eating at least 165 grams plus, really focusing on the protein and the calorie deficit to do all the heavy lifting. And other macronutrients are based more on personal preference within calorie control. Now this gives us a good starting point, but what should we do throughout the course of the month? So let's talk about number 4, adjustments. In most cases, you're going to need to make some adjustments to food levels or the action steps to help your clients get results. Depending on what you're observing from the scale, remember to lose 10 pounds in a month. This is going to be around 2 to 3 pounds per week, or 1 to 1.5 kilograms per week. If your client isn't seeing this, you may need to make some adjustments. And if they're sticking to the plan well, there's good adherence, which means they're following the things that they should be doing. It's going to need to come from less food or more exercise, which means removing 10% of their calories, mainly coming from carbohydrates and fat, and keep the protein the same, or increasing their activity levels, adding in 1 to 2,000 more steps per day. Whatever is easiest for the client and also yourself to take from or to add to. During this part of the process, we're really looking to adjust food or exercise levels to reach those targets, to reach those appropriate weekly losses, which leads me to the last part of the plan, which is number 5, diets are temporary. Everyone wants results and everyone wants results yesterday. And of course, it doesn't always work like that, even if you are working with a coach. And it may not be in everyone's best interest to do things fast. But with that being said, after working with thousands of weight loss clients, I've learned this. As coaches, we need to get over this mindset that everything needs to be sustainable and for life. There are periods of time where people should be more aggressive and more relaxed, more focused, or more free. There is a time and a place for everything, and for weight loss, this process is all about compromise. You can have it all, but you can't have it all at once, which means for a period of time, especially if the client wants to lose 10 pounds in a month, they should limit processed foods and prioritize whole foods, limit eating out to around 2 to 3 times per week maximum. It's almost impossible to lose fat and lose weight if you're eating out more than this. Conversely, work in some foods that are non-diet foods, they're treats. For most people, this actually limits cravings and gives them something to look forward to. And temporarily limit alcohol. There's nothing inherently fattening about alcohol, but when you're in a weight loss phase, it's just added calories that you don't really need. Which means during this phase, here's the prescription. Prioritize whole foods, limit eating out to around 2 to 3 days per week, work in some treats, and limit alcohol. And that's it, folks. That is the exact plan I would give to a client if they wanted to lose around 10 pounds in a month. Just to recap, here's what I would do. I set calories based on 3 days of tracking. I'd get them strength training around 3 to 4 times per week. I'd add in 2 to 3,000 more steps than the baseline. that get them to eat around 1.5 to 2.0 grams per kilogram of protein per day. I'd adjust based on progress, and I'd make some temporary sacrifices during this month. Now, as great as all those tips are, if you're really serious about starting a nutrition coaching business, here's what I'll have you do next. You can't just send over to someone this plan and expect them to do it. You need to check in with them, which I'm gonna teach you to do right here. So check it out now, and I'll see you in the next video.